Hey guys, Izzy here, back with another video, and today we're actually going to be talking about a pretty controversial topic in the Warframe community, and a pretty hot topic in general. It's the self-damage that was introduced in Devstream 165. Now, I did briefly talk about this in the previous video where I went over the stuff that were mentioned in Devstream 165, so if you guys want to check that out, link is going to be in the description below, or you can check out the playlist and it'll be right there. But in general, I did go over some of my thoughts in regards to it, but I really kind of breezed over it since it wasn't like the main focus of the video. Well, kind of was, but more so I just wanted to talk about Devstream 165. So today I want to go over just a little bit and talk about in general like what I've seen thus far in terms of like opinions from other players, and just kind of like the outrage, because I totally understand, right? And self-damage is something that a lot of players don't want, but there's also a lot of players that want self-damage to be in the game. Now, mainly, I believe, in my opinion, right, like the reason as to why players want self-damage to be in the game is because they want the AoE meta to die out. And I'm not gonna try to diminish anyone's reasonings in regards to this. Today I'm just gonna go over like as a neutral party, I guess you could say, kind of give my thoughts why I think that one thing is one side, I guess, could be right and the other as well, and kind of also talk about like why this is something that could be being brought back and stuff. Just go over it. But anyways, let's just jump right into it, right? So self-damage in the game is something that obviously at the beginning of Warframe wasn't something that was brought into it. So they brought it back because explosive weapon, or they brought it in the first place rather, because explosive weapons were pretty dominant, extremely powerful as well. Things like Taunt Core came to mind whenever I was playing the game back in the day. When something was a little bit too hard and I just wanted to kill it, then it was kind of reasonable to bring out the Taunt Core and just kill it. It made it a lot easier. And so they did receive a nerf in regards to, of course, the self-damage. And it was a lot more punishing than what they talked about it in Devstream 165. Now, if you guys don't know, in Devstream 165, the demonstration of self-damage was that it would always do 75% of your damage if you get hit. So it's never going to one-shot you like it did previously. However, 75% is still a lot of damage. Don't get me wrong, like 75% is extremely punishing. Not as punishing as being one-shotted and just flying right out of the fucking like map and shit. But it's still extremely punishing. And I believe that if by any chance they do go through with these plans, because like they said, it's not something that they are planning to do anytime soon. It's not something solid. It's just what they have at the time. And like I said, they want it to be as transparent as possible as to what they're doing. So yeah. Anyways, they showed it off, said it's only going to be 75%, and again, it's too punishing. If it were to be brought back, I believe that at least, because it makes no sense, right, for the weapon itself to do so much damage to yourself, maybe by just 25%, right? Like it would take at least 4 times for you to hit yourself with the weapon for it to kill you, and it's still killing yourself with the weapon. It's still punishing, but at least it's not as punishing as 75%. Like, come on, that just seems like way too much. But anyways, let's talk about, let's ask the question, like, should self-damage really be in Warframe? And honestly, as a person that really, it's not that I don't care, but regardless of whether they add self-damage or not, I'm still gonna play the same weapons that I I've previously used. I'm still gonna play Warframe. I'm not gonna stop using those weapons, and it is what it is. I'll just play more carefully, I guess. But I believe the answer is no. I really don't think that self damage should be in the game. Cause let's just throw something out there, right? Like, let's say, for example, let's say self damage gets introduced in the game, and explosive weapons now cost 75% of your health to go bye-bye whenever you get hit by it by a mistake. Why would it only affect your weapons when there's so many Warframes that already have explosive abilities, such as snow globe blowing up, or Gara's wall blowing up, or hell, even fucking Gyre's balls? Like, they go ape shit and they don't hit your Warframe. And I highly doubt that once the self damage gets introduced into the game, that abilities get affected by. But why wouldn't abilities get affected? And not don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to suggest that DE needs to put they need to put self damage on abilities. But think of it this way, right? The same reasons as to why they wouldn't or shouldn't or they wouldn't think of adding self damage into Warframe abilities should be the same reasons as to why they don't want to add self damage to weapons. Like, it just wouldn't make sense. It feels out of place because one thing happens with this thing and it doesn't happen with the other thing, which would be the Warframe abilities. It doesn't happen, but with the weapons, it does. And it just doesn't make sense. Now, I understand why they want to bring self-damage to the game. Obviously, AoE weapons and explosive weapons are generally extremely dominant, but it makes sense as to why they're dominant. This is a horde-like game, and I mentioned this on my previous video. Obviously, AoE is going to be king in a horde-like game like Warframe. Like, it's always the case. Whenever you're playing a horde-based game, you're more than likely always going to have an AoE attack to hit as many enemies as possible. Obviously, you're not going to want to just target down one specific target when there's like 20 in the fucking room. You're going to want to hit everyone else. And it's basically the same thing with like your Warframe abilities. You always want to have a Warframe that causes AoE damage, stuff like that. Not always, but you get the gist, right? Like, it's obvious that in a horde-like game, AoE is always going to be extremely dominant over every other weapon, regardless. Now, why would they want to, of course, address that issue? Obviously, a lot of weapons get extremely overshadowed by AoE weapons just because they don't do AoE weapon or AoE damage, or they're just just single target. Snipers are one of them. Now, snipers are, of course, situational, and you can use them in certain scenarios. Of course, I believe every weapon or most weapons in Warframe can be used in very specific scenarios. But AoE weapons can be used in literally any scenario whatsoever. So, yes, definitely there's an issue with balancing because it's just impossible for you to be able to get the other weapons that are not AoE or explosive to get maybe the same usage as the other ones that are just not. And it's tough, right? Like, for DE, it has to be extremely disheartening for them to just create a weapon, a weapon that is maybe a really cool idea, but it just doesn't get, used up. And maybe it's a really good weapon, right? Like, maybe it's extremely powerful, but it just doesn't get the usage that it could get just because it's not AoE, it's single target. And yeah, it just becomes a problem, right? It's hard. It has to be extremely hard for them. Like, it has to be extremely disheartening. And I get it. I get why they want to do it, but I just feel like they're going at it the wrong way. Self-damage is just not good, because Doing that would just make the weapons barely playable, because most of these weapons have extreme fucking like radiuses. Like it's going to hit you. It's going to be really hard not to have the weapon hit you. You're going to have to play at an extreme distance, and obviously that's not very engaging. That just calls for people to be in a specific spot, maybe like camping. Basically, it just calls for people to camp in order to play the game they want, or the way they want, and or the weapons they want, whatever. So it's not healthy. It's not a good idea, I would say. And maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe this is not as great, but they did it in a way with Excalibur's slash waves. If you guys don't remember, or you weren't playing Warframe at that time, previously, when you were playing Excalibur with his Exalted Blade, every time you do a slash, it kind of procs this slash wave or shock wave that travels, and it hits opponents and it does damage. Now, previously, it didn't have a damage fall off, so whenever you use it, it just continued to do the same damage so long as it was still present and not disappear. Nowadays, right, like it just has damage fall off, so the further the opponent is from it, it's gonna do less damage. So the more that projectile the more that projectile you know goes in terms of distance, it's going to diminish its damage. In a way, they could do that with AoE weapons, but instead of damage fall off per distance, it's damage fall off per AoE. So, say for example, a specific radius in that explosive damage or AoE damage does the full blunt of the damage, and then the rest has either half and then just diminishes the more distant the enemies are. Now, that's not really going to affect a lot of the weapons, because it's still going to be a good chunk. Like, the radius is still going to be a good chunk, but at the very least, I could see that kind of working. I'm not sure right now. I highly doubt that's how it works right now. But at the very least, by doing that, you don't get the self damage, and you still do the damage that you want to do. It's just that it's now going to be a specific radius, not the whole radius of the explosion. Again, I'm not sure if that's how it works right now, and you guys can definitely correct me on that. I searched it up, and I really couldn't find any place where I could actually confirm that there's a blast radius drop-off damage or fall-off damage. So let me know if there is, because maybe this suggestion is just not going to work. Or it could definitely work, and you just have to lower the numbers. Again, I really don't feel like they should add self-damage, and I, to a certain degree, don't feel like they need to nerf AoE damage, because, again, this is extremely common for Horde-like games. So, AoE belongs in Warframe. It just definitely belongs in it. And there are places where we don't have AoE, like, for example, in Railjack, we barely have any AoE weapons, particularly, because it makes sense, right? And there's places where AoE weapons aren't as great as just single target weapons, maybe stuff like assassinations, islands, maybe stuff like that. But I just don't feel like the player base should suffer because DE doesn't want AoE, and I can understand why they want to remove or add self damage, because they want to a certain degree nerf the usage of AoE weapons and kind of have the other weapons being used. But it just kind of doesn't make too much sense. Now, I also understand the people that want, well, I don't understand it as much, but I understand why people want self damage to be in the game. They want the AoE meta to die out. They want to see diversity in weapons, and that's all. That's really cool and all. That's great, but I'm very strong I'm in the very strong belief that you should play Warframe the way that you want, and everyone should be able to enjoy Warframe the way they want. It's the same thing that I do with Pokemon. I feel like everyone should play the game the way they want to, and they should not be forced or humiliated by the way that they're playing the game. So yeah, I think that's pretty much my thoughts on it. I guess I was a little bit more one-sided. I'm sorry if it came off that way, because again, I do. I swear I'm like kind of in the middle right now. Like, I don't really mind if they add it, but I don't think they should add it at all, because it just doesn't add up to me, honestly. If you guys, of course, do believe that it should be in the game, please leave a comment down below. Let me know why you think that it should be added in the game. Give me your thoughts. Like, if like, for or against, it doesn't matter. Give me your thoughts. Let's talk about this in the comments. Of course, respectfully. Let's be respectful to each other. And if someone has a bad take, hey, they deserve the bad take. Like, they have the right to have a bad take, and it is what it is, right? But yeah, let's go ahead and just talk about this. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today's video. I really do appreciate the support. Like I said, I appreciate the support that I've been receiving throughout, you know, the last couple of weeks, and the channel has been growing. I'm very happy. So yeah, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Comment this in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys on the next video, which I am working on. It should be up by this week as well. So goodbye, later, peace.